You ready? So you're going to hate this, but there is no magic to response rates or to the number of people that respond to your survey. What's important is that you get the number of responses that's meaningful to you. So even in academic research, if you're doing an MRI study, you probably have 10 subjects, and if you're doing an internet study, you have 100,000 subjects. And it's different, the way you interpret those and what you're looking for. I promised you a note about statistics. The more subjects you have, the more you're going to find statistically significant results. If you were doing stats, which you're not going to do. If you have small numbers of people, for small things. So if we measured everybody in the United States and we said, do you have hair or feet or something that most people have? You would find, how many people have feet and hair? Okay. There's going to be people out of both those categories, but by and large, most people are going to have feet and hair. If you run a correlation on that, you're going to get a correlation coefficient of about 1, meaning they are 100% correlated, right? If you have 10 people, and you say how many people have hair and feet, it kind of depends on what group you're in, but you may not get as high a correlation, especially if you were at Wounded World War II Veterans Day. You would end up with a very low correlation between feet and hair. It's kind of morbid. I've never used that example before. I don't think I'm going to use it again. I'm sitting here going, oh, I wish I hadn't gone down that road. So the smaller your group, the more extreme your answers need to be to find a correlation. And the less you can rely on the fact that people might vary day to day. Again, in City of Promise, they work only in the City of Promise footprint, which is West Haven, 10th and Page, and Star Hill. Every year there are between 5 and 9 high school seniors. So each year we calculate the graduation rate. Well, if you have 5 high school seniors and 1 doesn't graduate, you have 80% graduation. If you have 10 high school seniors and 1 doesn't graduate, you have 90% graduation rate, which looks like a huge improvement. Oh, we went from 80 to 90. Well, it would be a huge improvement if we had 5,000 students. It is still an improvement, but you have to hold in your head how much of a difference that makes, right? Okay. So you want enough responses to be meaningful. You just want enough. Often people say that has to be at least 30%. Right? I think that's probably reasonably fair-ish in that, you want it not to just be a few fringe people who are answering that really care or don't care. You really want to get sort of more of a general idea. You may really want everybody. In here, in these classes, we have almost everybody always responds. Sometimes we miss 1 or 2, but generally we have high response. But what's important to you?
When sharing results externally, is there a response benchmark?
If it's important to you, you're going to convince them that it's important to them. You can sample too. You guys probably would sample. Like if you went and you had a whole community thing, there's no way you're going to get everybody who comes into that art exhibit to answer a survey. But if you walked around with a clipboard, you could probably get 25 people to respond to a clipboard survey if you asked them while they were walking around, right? Which would be an innovative way of doing the survey. So instead of asking people to fill it out and turn it in, you could say, hey, we really want to find out how meaningful this exhibit is to you and what you liked about it. Can I just have 2 minutes of your time? A lot of people are going to go, yeah. And then you say, okay, well, what about this, what about that? You have them answer the questions. Maybe you have a picture or card that has a scale on it. Maybe you make it so they don't have to have a scale. And you just maybe you ask them yes, no, and you just do it. There you go. You could have the marbles. You could have a drawing. You could have cards that they put in bins on their way out. You could email them later. You have people say they want to sign up for the newsletter or for the next event, and everybody sends out gives you their email, and you send it out, you're not gonna get more than 30%. But you'll get about 30%, maybe 25%. MHA, we just asked, I think, 55 people whether or not they come to listening sessions. We so far have 22 responses. I guessed 20 when we made the plan. I don't know why I guessed 20, I just guessed 20. That just seemed right, like a little bit less than half of the people decided that they wanted to actually give them the time to come do a session with them.
We have, our problem child is our Free Tax Preparation Coalition. And so we're using IRS tax software. We can put a survey in there. It comes back to us in Excel, as an Excel file. But we have 22 to 2,500 taxpayers. We can set it up so that it has to be answered, but then also allow, I don't want to respond as a response. Part of the issue is the sheer number. So my first year there, I knew nothing. So I put a quick survey in the software. Other folks in the coalition wanted some information. Part of the issue is UVA students are doing
Tax prep.
the tax prep for the most part. They aren't comfortable asking the questions, and it's not a situation where you can turn the computer around and let the person do the survey. Or it's not easy to think about doing that because some of them aren't laptops, etc. And I don't have access to the people once they leave. So I got the results that year, and it was overwhelming. I didn't, how do you take 2,200 responses times however many choices they had? And so the Baton School was very nice and used some third-party software and did it for us that year. So this past year, just to try to get back to be able to investigate how to ask questions and maybe get better responses, and to get the right people to answer them, which are where we're really targeting the low-income audience versus some of the middle-income folks that come. We just did paper, but we only did it for so many days as well, just from the practical standpoint of people are coming to get their taxes done. They don't necessarily really want to do a survey. So we did a shorter survey on paper, and pretty much everybody that was offered the survey did it. And so we got 200 out of 2,200 people. And I was really happy with the data that we got back.
And it was manageable.
And it was
too,
manageable.
right?
So this year I felt like, is that really representative or not? So we put it back online this year, but now I'm already afraid of how good I have. So is it okay to just say, all right, it has to be manageable. It
Absolutely.
may not be statistically significant to somebody else who says we're only capturing that,
I
those
think it's,
few,
well,
but-
one, you're capturing 10% of a very large population. If you served 100 people and you were capturing 10%, that might not look so good, right? Because you'd be getting 10 people. But if you're doing 2,200 surveys and you're getting back 220 surveys, that actually, you can start to slice and dice that data and have your cells not be too tiny where we're talking about graduation rates of like 5 people, right?
Right.
And there are a lot of ways of sampling in what you're talking about. You can do it for a certain number of days across everybody. You would think the electronic was better than the paper, but that's not what you found. So I'm a little bit wondering why you're going back to electronic, but that's okay. You probably have some sort of reason for it, like it's hard to do the data entry or something like that, which is a cost benefit, right? You also could say we are going to talk to preparers. We're going to go, we have, how many preparers do you have?
200.
Okay, so you might say, we're going to take 10 of those preparers who are more experienced, and we are going to have them really talk with us about doing the survey and what their concerns are and stuff like that. We're going to get them to do the survey, right? So they go scatter all over. You might not even have to do a certain number of days. It's just everybody that they prepare their taxes for, right? That's a little bit more of a problem if you're asking how the tax preparer did, right? Because those are the more invested ones. But it's great if you're asking people how they're spending their tax return. Because it doesn't matter. You're just taking the good ones and training them to be comfortable. Another thing you could do is you could have a person at the tax preparer part. Like you could go and stand at a different tax preparer thing for 10 days in a row, and you could interview people as they came out, right? And you could give them a $10 gift card or a granola bar, or whatever it was, you know, or a balloon for their kid, or whatever it was that they were gonna get for leaving. You could do a combination of those. I mean, I know we've sort of talked about this before, and it is really interesting that the paper works better, because people really want it to be private, and it makes the people giving the survey very uncomfortable. Right? But you can sample those in lots of different ways that might get you more than 250, but still get you a lot, right? You could have certain sites do it. Now that biases the data a little bit, because you might have a site that really gets older people and a site that really gets younger people, so you might want both of those, or 2 younger people and 1 older people one, depending on what your population is, so that it sort of represents it. When we did the CNE one, we talked for a long time about the interviews that they want to do. They want to do some interviews at the end of each year with the different organizations to really get a story about how CNE impacts the organization. And we talked a long time about whether or not those 6 people, we figured we could handle 6. Should it be random, the people we pick? Should it be stratified, people who came to just workshops versus people who are in the leadership circle? Should it be small organizations and large organizations? We had a whole discussion about what made sense, and I forget what we decided on, Dana knows, but we decided on whatever it was that we felt made sense for the type of information they wanted to get back. And we just debated it. So you debate, well, what do we want? What makes the most sense? You just need to be thinking about it, is the important thing. Yes.
In order to get more responses, how legitimate is it to extend the date?
Totally legitimate.
That's okay.
But the most important thing is to not let them leave. So, how's that you guys? It was the last group, it was the evaluation group I did, right? Very invested people, right? You guys are paying a good bit of money, you're spending 18 hours in here with me. I would think you'd want to give me feedback and make this work. I would think the longer you were with me, the more invested you were. And I think in the 5th class, we were doing individual consultation like we will do next time. And so some people left early, and I forgot to remind them to do their survey, so I asked Dana to email them and have them fill out their survey. So we had like the 2 from the people I was working with left, who were still here. Who would be more invested in that survey than you? Nobody. Nobody responded. So don't let them walk away. Incentivize them either through giving them voice and opening up space for their power to emerge, by giving them candy, or balloons, or money, or gift cards. I think we've already talked about how drawings don't work if they're not present, right? So if you can't communicate back out to everybody who got the reward, nobody's really invested in the reward, and it often happens so far later that everyone's already forgotten about it, like it's not getting them to do it. You can do texting surveys. I don't know, any of you ever want to experience what a testing survey is, go to the AT&T store and ask for help. And then they will send you a texting survey. It's very easy. They ask a question, you hit an answer, they ask another question, they hit an answer, you say thank you very much. There are programs that will text people like email and have them respond. We talked a little bit about maybe doing that with the INR service, the information referral service at United Way, where people call in and ask for help, and then you want to know whether or not that help was useful. Well, the most important thing is not to get them off the phone until you find out whether or not they think they can use that information, right? Because they'll say yes or no. Most people will say yes, but you're still asking them if they think they can use the information. The other thing would be, they did call you, right? And so you can say, is this a cell phone? Could I text you and check in on this and make sure it was helpful? And if they say yes, then you can send them a text a week later, the computer program could, that said, you know, have you used the information that United Way gave you, yes or no? And they just text back, yes or no, and then you've got your data. You can do the marbles, you can do the when they sign up, you can do the when they leave, you can do paper, you can do electronic, it totally matters. I also endorse the NPR approach. If you are ever so unlucky as to be getting a survey from me, I will send you a survey at a strategically timed time. I'm not going to send you a survey at 9 o'clock on Monday morning. Why not?
Busy.
You're busy. Or you're still having a donut. Either way, you're not answering the survey. When would you guys be most receptive to receiving a survey on email?
Lunchtime.
On email? It actually has no impact because my work email is running
Yeah.
Anyone else have an idea of when they'd be most likely to respond?
Maybe Friday afternoon.
I love Friday.
Yeah, because you're down, right? Like,
Yeah.
you're not like, 1 o'clock on a Friday, you came back from lunch, you're not really wanting to work, the day's almost over. Oh, look, a survey, I'm gonna fill that out. I send them typically on Tuesday mornings around 9:30, and then I will send a reminder Thursday before lunch, like 11:30, and then I might send another reminder Friday at like 1:30. And what I've done is I've sort of strategically decided when people might be most likely to answer the survey. Each time so one, it's in PR because I do it a lot. I mean, I'll do it every other day. The other thing I'll do is I will often, like if I say you have to do it by Friday at 5, I'll send it at 1:30 and I'll say it has to be due by 5, and then Monday I'll say, I extended the deadline, you can do it by 3 o'clock today, or something, and then people are like, oh, now I'll do it, right? I meant to do it, but I forgot, I'll do it. So, the other thing I will do is I will often, as long as it doesn't look too bad, say what percentage of people have already responded, because that helps people feel like they're sort of, nobody likes being a sheep, but everybody wants to be a sheep. You don't want to be left out, you want to do what everyone else does. So I'll say we've gotten, and if the percentage is bad, but if the number is good, I'll just put the number, because sometimes people, they don't know what the bigger number is. So I might say, maybe I'm looking for 5,000 responses, but I'll be like, 230 people have responded. Don't be left out. Now, the people who respond early get really annoyed with this, but I don't care much. Because, especially if I'm surveying the service community, because I can't, if I'm doing SurveyMonkey, I just have to blast it. It's anonymous, I don't know who's come back. If I do know who's come back, I'll take out the people who've responded and send it back. You also want to keep the required questions to a minimum if you're doing it online, so that people are able to, only have to answer a few things. I hate it when like everything is required and all the long answers are required and all that kind of stuff. I end up just sort of like putting up, I don't know, or NA or something like that. You want to keep personal and demographic information to a minimum because people don't like answering those kinds of questions. You want to keep your progress bar on there or have it on one sheet. People like one sheet surveys or a card or something like that. But don't go cheating. People do not like one sheet that like looks like a crib sheet from your biology test. They want space. They want it to be easy to view. They like the questions that are all dots where they just fill in the same question over and over again. And honestly, you want to keep your open-ended questions to a minimum.
So we have childcare scholarships. We just have problems with surveys. These guys don't want it, they just don't respond, but we really need them to. So is it okay to do more than one survey? In other words, maybe this month I'll do a survey, I did keep it short and brief and big font, then 60 days later do a second survey.
Absolutely. I
See
think,
if
that's
they
a
get
great
involved.
strategy if they don't get survey fatigue, right?
Yeah.
So you're balancing, do you want to put all the questions in at once and offer them something big in return? Or do you want to ask them for a bunch of stuff, small periods of time? Small things many times. I mean, it also seems like part of the application process could be the response process, right? So, or maybe the reapplication process is a response. Or maybe you decide that, in theory, you're only going to give money for 6 months because you want them to come back. And when they come back, in your mind, you always give them more money, but that gives you this other opportunity to ask them questions all at once. So in order to, I need you to fill this out, they're like, okay, and you say, thank you very much, you give them a balloon, and then you say, great, now you have 6 months of childcare left. So you want to, part of the way that we provide services can be tied to people answering the surveys, and then it just becomes part of the service. You can still say, we want to know how good this is, but they're coming in, they're motivated to come in because they're gonna get something out of it. Other questions? What kinds of challenges do you guys have? No challenges? Oh, it's gonna be easy.
Just sort through all that stuff.
Yeah, you have to digest it, don't you? But you can have plenty of time to do. Let's see if this is lopsided.
I think part of it is getting a lot of buy-in from staff at all different levels. So, you know, when I look at
Good point.
Java, you know, we have an IR person, we have options counselors in all the communities who also do information assistance. So getting them to actually ask and then record the answer of, so was this information helpful for you, would be,
So
to
there's-
balk at it.
Yeah.
Things like
So
that
there's
are-
a couple of ways of increasing staff buy-in. The first is to have like, you know, I mean, it's harder at Java because you guys are so big, but in some of the other organizations, you just have a real heart-to-heart with your staff and say, in order to keep us running, we have to get the money. And in order to get the money, we have to have the outcome. We have to be able to demonstrate the outcomes, and we need to be able to do this. The second thing is to put it in people's jobs descriptions and put it in their performance evaluations, right? That motivates people. A third thing to do, which is much more pleasant, is to post the results periodically to the staff. To say, and in fact, this is, there's this big gross problem with physicians not washing their hands, right? So there's this big problem at hospitals and stuff where people don't actually wash their hands. And I'm not a fan of humiliation, but they tried to do all sorts of things to get people to wash their hands, and what worked was publishing percentages of people who didn't wash their hands and the names of people who didn't wash their hands, or sending the people who didn't wash their hands specific emails saying you're bringing down the average, right? I don't know how they observe the washing. And I'm kind of grossed out when I think about it. I'm like, don't touch me, did you wash your hands? Not just because of the other germs. If you post the results, then people start to get the feeling that what they're doing in their job matters, right? You know, if you're able to say, we just got this grant because you guys collected the data that helped us be able to get this money, which helped us be able to pay you to keep your job, people become invested in that. If you are excited about it, people become invested in it. If you make it non-punitive to get bad results, people become excited about it. And that's really hard, that culture change, to be able to say, if we find out that we're not doing well, we're not here to fire people, what we're here is to figure out what we can collectively do. It builds the same buy-in that we were just talking about with Tyler, about like, you know, having people have voice and participation in the organization. So if you use it as a tool for staff engagement, as opposed to a task that they have to do, that becomes a lot better. You can ask them also about their experiences and have that come in to the pool. I know Erica over at the Free Clinic, the director of the Free Clinic, she and I had this long talk about how they should ask their staff about their supervisors, because some departments had like 10 people and some departments had like 1 or 2 people, so you couldn't really, if you specifically asked people about their supervisors, they weren't necessarily anonymous, but if you globally asked people about their supervisors, then you didn't necessarily get, you didn't know who to go get, which supervisor to go get. So we talked about this for a long time, and what I ended up recommending is that I think, Erica, what you have is 2 questions. You have a question about how happy are your employees and how good is the supervision? And you have a question about how to support weak supervisors. And what you're asking me is, how do I answer both those questions at the same time? And I think you need to separate them. So in order to get an idea of how good the supervision is across the organization, you need to ask people anonymously, because their staff are not going to respond to a survey that if they feel pulled out, right? Then, if you find that you have weak supervisors, one, you might know who those supervisors are. It might be no surprise to you. In fact, my guess is she does know who weak supervisors are, right? So you can take the data to them, right? Or you could bring the supervisors together and you could say, it looks like we've got some disagreement among some of our staff about how good supervision is going, what can we do to support your supervision? Right? Or you could then bring all the staff back in, and you could say, you could bring in a third-party person who doesn't know them and have them talk about what the supervisors are. But it was a two-step process that they were trying to make one step. There were two questions that were trying to be asked. So I made a tangent there for a minute, but you invest the staff in the questions that you're asking, whether it's of your consumers or of themselves or of the organization. You give them voice. You don't ask more than one question at a time. You post the answers. I think the people, why would anyone fill out a survey about the Region 10 picnic? They will if they know that that's going to make the picnic better next year. And Region 10 has proved over and over and over and over again that what people ask for at the picnic happens. People become happier, more people go to the picnic, people answer the survey, and they do that with everything, right? And so consumer surveys are fed back. C&E feeds back the results of y'all's survey to you. That's a technique to help you be more invested in what's going on. Does that help?
Yes.
Yeah. And tone, because if everybody comes around and you show everybody's data, they need to be supported. It really needs to be strengths-based. You have to be able to say, we're not collecting this data to beat ourselves over the head. We're trying to figure out where we should be focusing resources next. Where have we got it set, and what do we need to do better? Where's our new priority? And if everybody's bought into that, it might take a little while to set that tone. But once that tone is set, and once you've set a tone of inclusiveness and analyzing the data and understanding what it means, people become much more invested in it. A lot of times it's fear. And there's some people who just can't handle data, right? Maybe you never get them. Maybe you have to go directly to them and ask them the questions. Other questions?
I have a question about collecting. Do you solely use Excel, or have you used like an Access database before?
So back in the day, like in the early 90s, I was very, very good at the Access database program, and I created a huge database in Access, and it's nice because there's all these nice entry things and stuff like that. We were doing data entry on a research project. Since then, Access has gotten a lot more complex, and I stopped using it. I do know a lot of people who use Access to gather in their data, and it's nice because it just makes such pretty entry screens and stuff. But if it's just me entering the data, all that's behind all that fancy Access stuff is Excel. So if I'm just entering the data, I just as soon enter it to Excel. And you guys don't need statistics. You don't need, I mean, if you want to find out what the risk ratios are, you totally should just get someone to do risk ratios for you, and you have to use a different kind of program. But Excel will give you correlations and correlation coefficients and statistical significance. I think it'll even do t-tests, which is looking to see whether or not the number in two categories is the same or different based on the whole population. So if you are interested in stats, I have never worked with a community organization and I've done correlations and have had statistical significance measures, and I have done odd risk ratios, which is if you are Black, you're more likely to need this service statistically than if you're white. I've done both of those once in the 20 years that I've been working in the community. You don't need statistics. You need nice graphs. So I just use Excel. Other things. Do you guys now feel like you can go and look at your surveys and think about your surveys and start wording them? Okay, that's your homework. So what you're going to do is you're going to take the surveys that you have, or there's one organization that doesn't have surveys. You want to think about what is it that we want to start with. I don't really care. Don't bite off more of an apple than you can chew. Or don't take a bigger bite of the apple than you can chew. Basically what you need to do is learn how to create a survey, right? And make sure you're asking the right questions. But you do want to know, what are you trying to get out of the survey? How does it fit into your overall understanding of the organization? Get the survey either right or start to rewrite the questions. everybody bring those in. And we are going to have you talk about your experience of rewriting your survey and present your survey a little bit to the group, so bring copies of it. And everybody will comment. So this is both an opportunity for you to do work and to start getting feedback, and for everybody else in the room to start using their expertise in looking at other surveys. We will do that for, let's see, there's 7 organizations. We will do that for about 45 minutes, and then what we will do is I will let you continue to work on your surveys in here. I will give you the exit form. I will go around and provide like about 10 minutes of consultation to each person individually to help you think about where you're going in your work. As you finish your, I would use this as a work session because you're going to want it. You're going to have new ideas about what you need to do. You're going to have questions about how do I ask this, how do I put this in, what happens. But as you're done working, you can leave, and then we will come back the next time and really look more closely again at the wording and provide some individual consultation. If you feel like you need this is a big class, I said in the first session last week, so if you feel like you need more individual consultation, I will hold office hours or make an appointment with you to talk a little bit about your survey. Some of you guys are doing things that are a little bit different than what other folks are doing, and it's harder to figure out how to do that. And I don't want anyone to leave here not feeling like they got a little bit of me individually, so I'll make sure that I offer that. So we're going to spend two periods really talking about and perfecting your surveys. Then what we're going to do is we'll have the session after that, we'll be doing Excel together, and you'll get a file, an email that you can pull up on your laptop, and you guys can come and we can sort of work together, and you'll have more of an idea of what your questions are. You know, what is the data you're trying to graph? And I have lots of different examples of data and how we graph it. And then we'll do another presentation of our surveys so that everybody can see how they've evolved, which they will, and kind of pull the information together, and you'll go off and make that.
And we should focus on just one survey.
You can focus on 1 or 2. I really wouldn't suggest that you focus on more than 2, just because it's just a learn. Like, I'm not gonna be able to give you that much feedback in each of them, but you will get feedback that will help. You'll then internalize. The idea is for you to internalize how to do it, and then you can go off and do it. And then after the class, I'm always happy to look at a survey and send you back feedback. That's easy. It just takes me like 5 minutes. Okay? So I'm gonna go to Mardi Gras. You guys are gonna work on your surveys, and I'll see you. I'll see you in 2 more weeks.
Yeah.
In February.
Yeah, I'm still reading.
Oh, fill out your survey. Fill out your survey.
And tell again, if you could fill out your survey, that would be great. Thanks so much.
It is the one that has a lot of elements that, like, we really
Okay, so we're good?